You mentioned the thing about food sovereignty, and it's something I've seen you talk in the past. So what is the difference then between food sovereignty and then food security?
Yeah, great question. And it's also important for, again, every African to understand the difference. Because when you're talking about food security, and I'll explain in a non-technical manner, even share an anecdote or two, so that people can realize we already have this or we already had this. Because if you're looking at food security, it is purely the ability of a nation to feed the people, wherever that food is coming from. So if you're saying that Kenya is food secure, for example, Brian, yet what Kenya is largely consuming is imported wheat. So if somebody in Umoja Estate and Lavington Estate and Kibra, every morning they are consuming mandazi, and a sizable percentage of the wheat used to bake to make this mandazi is from Ukraine and Russia. Yes, they are food secure because they are able to eat and their bellies are full. You know, they are not starving. There's no famine. But as we witnessed, the moment there was that war between Ukraine and Russia, I think we all know by now that the wheat supply in Africa was severely affected. And to date, the country and the continent has not fully recovered. You know, there are still gaps because the wheat that we used to import, a large percentage is no longer coming in. So yes, we had food security. Yes, in your household and in my household and millions of others across the continent, you know, the statisticians would say that we are food secure. But in reality, we don't have food sovereignty. Now, this brings me to food sovereignty, which in a nutshell, this guy who is consuming sweet potatoes for breakfast and then consuming African leafy vegetables for lunch from their farm, and then for dinner, consuming rice that was purchased, produced locally, whether it is Mwea, maybe this person is in central Kenya region, or Ahero, the western region. Now, that's somebody who is embodying food sovereignty, because they do not care from a nutrition perspective, from a food perspective. They are not affected by that Russia-Ukraine war, whereas millions of others are affected. So those who are not affected, now that's food sovereignty, if they are not affected. But those who are affected, even though they have 3 meals a day, that may be food security, but it's not food sovereignty. And the thing with food security is it becomes extremely addictive at a macro level, which is why to date, Kenya continues to import huge, massive percentages of rice. Yet when you go to the rice producing places here in Kenya, the farmers are not getting optimal returns from the rice. The farmers are able to produce a lot more rice. I remember, Brian, some 2 months ago, I went to Narok and we met wheat farmers there with their wheat languishing in their stores because there had been mammoth imports of wheat, partly because of corruption, but also partly because we're so addicted to that notion and that fact that we have to import this wheat, you see. So what should then happen is that we have to increasingly move away from food security to food sovereignty, because whoever controls what is in your plate and what goes into your stomach controls you. And then until we are able to control our food systems, to control all the food that we consume, we're going to remain beholden to wherever we're importing that food from.